My dear students, good afternoon. Today we are going to discuss the first chapter from the book Footprints Without Feet, that is a supplementary reader in English for class 10th. The name of the chapter is A Triumph of Surgery by James Herriot. Now I will give you the summary in English. First, Tricky's illness. The narrator of the story is Mr. Herriot. He is a veterinary doctor. He was really worried about the dog. Its name was Tricky. He was shocked to see it with its mistress. It had become hugely fat. Its eyes had become red. Its tongue came out from its jaws. It was in a state of disease. Tricky's mistress made Tricky ill. The mistress of the dog was Mrs. Pembury. She told Mr. Herriot that the dog seemed to have no energy. So she gave it more malt and cold liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks. She also gave it some cream, cakes, and chocolates despite Herriot's refusal. It was a rich diet. Herriot's warning to Mrs. Pembury. Herriot looked at the dog again. Its big trouble was that it had become greedy. It did not refuse food. Herriot asked Mrs. Pembury if she had been giving the dog plenty of exercise. She said she had not. Herriot warned her. If she didn't cut its food and gave it more physical exercise, it would be really ill. She said that he was right, but it was difficult for her. Tricky to be in hospital. Within next few days, Mrs. Pembury told Herriot that Tricky didn't eat anything. It refused to eat even its favorite dishes. It spent all its time lying panting. The narrator had made his plans in advance. He suggested that Tricky should be hospitalized for about a fortnight. The lady almost became unconscious. She was sure that it would die if he did not see it. Tricky in hospital. The narrator took the dog in his car. Mrs. Pembury gave Tricky's belongings like bed, cushions, toys, various bowls, coats, etc. At the hospital, Tricky looked down at other dogs. They sniffed around it and ignored it. Tricky's treatment. The narrator kept an eye on Tricky for 2 days. He gave it plenty of water but no food. On the third day, it started whimpering on seeing other dogs. It followed them down the garden. Later, that day other dogs had their food. When they had finished, Tricky walked around the bowls. He also licked them. It meant he was hungry. It was given some food. Tricky shows improvement. Tricky started to show progress. It was given no medicinal treatment. It ran about with the dogs all day. It discovered the joy of being with other dogs. Meanwhile, Mrs. Pembury continued ringing regularly. She asked various questions about Tricky, but the narrator told her that the dog was out of danger. When Tricky becomes all right. Mrs. Pembury started to bring round fresh eggs to build up Tricky's strength. The narrator began giving Tricky wine before and during the meal. The dog began to drink brandy also. Tricky now had 1 extra egg in the morning. It had wine at noon and brandy in the evening. After a fortnight, the narrator rang her up saying the dog was all right. Mrs. Pembury comes to take Tricky home.